So, I'm talking about sometimes I read an article from the economic collapse blog.com. Mr. Michael Snyder runs that place. And I mentioned the other day, he's actually running, I believe, for the Senate, if I recall. And he's not in Florida, I can tell you that much. But boy, if he was and it was in my district or whatever, I'd be voting for him for sure, district or not. But anyway, so now he's getting into the ins and outs of what it's like to be like kind of looking into what the daily activities are and that kind of thing. And as I read what he said, really the headline I already knew by reading the headline. Hey, it reminds me of Glenn Beck had a congressman that was wrestling with some boys and touching them inappropriately, allegedly. He stepped down as a Congress member. Yeah, but we got it all wrong. It's not what he meant. It wasn't bad. It was just playing, And Glenn Beck invited him on the show. Clear the air. And he couldn't clear the air. He couldn't do it. And Glenn Beck's like, I'm sorry, people. I'm trying. You can see him. Congressman, tell us what it is. And he couldn't say it. And then somehow the conversation turned to him telling Glenn Beck, do you know how many hours a day these congressmen, all of us, everybody, spends actually doing any work that you think they're supposed to be doing, and instead are campaigning and calling and dialing people. We need money, campaign contributions, just all day long. He says out of an entire 8-hour day, they may actually work about 2 hours, maybe, on stuff they should be working on. The rest of the time is spent bringing in money for themselves. Campaign contributions. That's what he said. I remember this years ago. I'll never forget it. So Michael Snyder may have just had a rude awakening himself. And that probably has pumped him up more to say, I really got to get in here because this is disturbing and disgusting what these people are doing, ruining our country. When I found out how members of Congress really spent their time, I just about threw up. From Michael Snyder. Did you know that many members of Congress spend 3 or 4 hours a day? Stop right there, Michael. It's much more than 3 or 4 hours. But 3 or 4 hours a day dialing for dollars in cramped call centers that both parties have set up in Washington? Did you know that? I promised that I would keep all of you updated on what I am learning as I run for Congress, and that I learned the other day just about had me losing my lunch. I always imagined members of Congress spending long hours in their offices working on legislation and other important matters, but the truth is that most members of Congress are little more than glorified telemarketers at this point. Winning the next election is everything for most of these Congress critters. And so they spend far more time making cold calls to potential donors than doing anything else. Could you imagine working at your job and you've got a job to do? You're a programmer, let's say in this case, or your sales team. Hey, pick up the phone, make those calls, buddy. Cold calls. Okay, gotta get the sales up. All right, making my calls. And you only do that for a couple hours a day. The rest of the day you're spent doing something on your own. Company's paying you. You're supposed to be bringing the company money. You're supposed to be doing the right thing for the company. Your interest should be for the company, but instead you're working on your own back pocket. A little side job. So you're milking the clock, make a few phone calls to shut management up. I made my calls, leave me alone for the day. And I'm all over this campaign contributions for myself. Or in this case, working a side job online. So we have these Congress people, these Congress members, who are doing exactly that. We're paying them big money, big fat insurance, health insurance that they get that we don't get. They're exempt from our crap, Obama crap, also known as Obamacare. They're exempt. Great, and when they leave Congress, I think they get their plans and stuff. They get their nice bonuses and everything else. They make roughly $1,000 a year as a Congress member, and they get massive campaign contributions coming in, of course, but that, and forget the campaign contributions, the $200,000 a year salary ain't enough. Miss Maxine Waters lives in a multi-million-dollar home. $200,000 a year salary doesn't make someone be able to afford a $4 million or $5 million home. So that's exactly what we have. People who are on the job, we're paying you. We're your boss. We're your boss. I'm your boss. You got to do what I tell you. I'm the person, the people. Yeah, sure you are. I only said that to you when I was running. Now that I'm in here, shut your face, taxpayer. I don't work for you anymore. I work for me. Unless the camera's on. The camera's on. Reverse that. Retract that. Cameras are on. Cameras are off. Piss off, little man. Have you ever had a politician call you up in the middle of the day begging for money? It is an absolutely disgraceful thing to do. But the truth is that money is the number one factor in determining election outcomes. And so our professional politicians have an endless appetite for it. Every 2 years, more than $1 billion is spent on congressional elections, and those that are masters at raising money just keep winning over and over again. Something desperately needs to be done to fix our fundamentally flawed system, but neither party seems to have any desire to take the money out of politics. Of course not. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article about the fact that the U.S. House of Representatives will only be in session for 147 days this year. But even on those days, members of Congress are not exactly spending much time doing what they were elected to do. During an interview with 60 Minutes, U.S. Representative Rick Nolan told Norah O'Donnell that members of Congress are expected to spend about 30 hours a week dialing for dollars in their respective call centers. Representative Rick Nolan says, well, both parties have told newly elected members of the Congress that they should spend 30 hours a week in the Republican and Democratic call centers across the street from the Congress dialing for dollars. And Norah O'Donnell says 30 hours a week? And he says 30 hours is what they tell you you should spend. And it's discouraging good people from running for public office. I could give you names of people who've said, you know, I'd like to go to Washington and help fix problems, but I don't want to go to Washington and become a mid-level telemarketer dialing for dollars or, for crying out loud. This is utterly shameful, and if I end up getting elected, Michael Snyder, I will never do that. In fact, I will push legislation to ban this practice. Former U.S. Representative David Jolly was also interviewed by O'Donnell, and he admitted to her that Republican members of Congress are actually given a telemarketing script to use while making these calls. It says simply by calling people, cold calling a list that fundraisers put in front of you, you're presented with their biography. So please call John. He's married to Sally. His daughter Emma just graduated from high school. They gave $18,000 last year to different candidates. They can give you $1,000 too if you ask them to. And they put you on the phone. And it's a script, he says. In 2013, new Democratic members of Congress were given a model schedule for how they should be spending their time. On that model schedule, 2 hours a day were allocated for committee/floor, and 4 hours a day were allocated for call time. In other words, those members of Congress were expected to only devote 2 hours a day to doing the jobs they were elected to do and 4 hours a day to make telemarketing calls. If we ever want to end this disgraceful system, we need to take matters into our own hands. Shortly after I announced that I was running for Congress, I was given a list of thousands of names in my district. It is the same list that other politicians are getting too. Even at this moment, even at this moment, people are having their dinners interrupted by desperate politicians that are dialing for dollars. If this ever happens to you, write the name of that politician down and never vote for that individual again. I have pledged not to participate in this same shameful system, and if I get the chance, I will work to abolish it. Yes, every campaign needs funding, but making telemarketing cold calls to people at home is not the way to do it. In fact, these politicians are actually trained to interrupt you during lunch and dinner because those are apparently some of the best times for raising money. And you know what they actually do? Because I've actually had a couple of calls. Hey, and it's their voice, but it's a recorded call. So as soon as you say something or whatever, okay, someone picks up, hi, and it's not the politician, of course. Now they're spamming you. The fake pre-recorded messages are from these pricks are, spamming your phone, and they know when you're going to be home. It's dinner time. Best time to call and screw somebody over. In fact, these politicians are actually trained to interrupt you during lunch and dinner because those are apparently some of the best times for raising money. And these call centers in DC are as bad as you are probably imagining. The following is more from former Representative David Jolly. It is a cult-like boiler room on Capitol Hill where sitting members of Congress, frankly I believe, are compromising the dignity of the office they hold by sitting in these sweatshop phone booths, calling people, asking them for money. And their only goal is to get $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 out of the person on the other end of the line. It's shameful. It's beneath the dignity of the office that our voters in our communities entrust us to serve, he said. Jolly is precisely correct. Any politician that makes these sort of calls is acting in a completely shameful manner. If we don't get the money out of politics, we are just going to end up with a bunch of sleazebags in Washington that spend most of their time on the phone bugging people for money. Is this what we want? Do we really want our laws to be made by those who can prove that they are the best telemarketers? Nobody is supposed to talk about these things, and I suppose that this is yet another article that is going to get me into trouble, but I don't care. Our system is deeply broken, and it needs to be fixed. Hopefully, by shedding some light on these issues, I have moved the ball in the right direction, he said. This is the same kind of thing that when Donald Trump says, we want term limits, we've got to put term limits. President has them, you Congress critters need to have them. What Congress critter is going to vote themselves out of office? Which is why he said we'll have to do it in a way that doesn't affect any standing member of current member of Congress, but after you're replaced later, then it kicks in. Hoping that they would vote for it at that point, because he knew damn well they would never vote for it now. So the same thing applies here. Are they going to stop doing the robocall, dialings and asking for money? No, they need their money. Campaign contributions, money. I got a campaign. I got to pay for commercials. I want this easy job. I want this job so I can say I'm a big shot and I wreck the country. Except they'll never tell you they did it. I didn't wreck the country. No, I was doing everything. I work for the American people. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, sure you do. Take care.